Valerie Pasha, thank you for joining me today to kind of discuss think tanks and your work at Watchdog here in Moldova and Chisinau. So today I know you have an interesting background in archaeology we were just kind of talking about, but so today we're going to just try to focus more narrowly on maybe the think tank sector, or just kind of how it functions within Moldovan politics and the region. But first, before we get into Watchdog and some of the work you do there as project manager, would you mind just giving a little bit of your personal background and how you kind of came to this position at Watchdog?
Well, I worked for up to 8 years in different positions, more or less related to policy sector. I worked in the state administration as an administrator of a state institution, and it was like learning by doing, many things related to legislation, policies, strategizing, and how all this bureaucratic process inside the government is going on. Mm-hmm. And also I worked after that as a public relation and political consultant for different electoral campaigns, starting from a very basic local level and finishing with a national level as a manager of national electoral campaign, and being more or less in touch with politics, politicians, political parties, political management also. And taking in account let's say the general situation in 2017, early 2017, together with a group of also somehow people experienced in different areas like economics, banking sector, urbanism, and city management. We decided to stay together to create a think tank type organization. We call that a Watchdog community, which this is the basis, actually a community of people who are members of this NGO, and also a network of experts, of colleagues who were involved from time to time, depending on what we have to do, which are the priorities.
Okay, if you mind me just stopping for a second, just to go back, before we get into Watchdog as it is today and the think tank community, I was curious a little more about your background. Was there any of these early projects that jumped out at you, which kind of led you in this direction? You were saying in 2017 is when you kind of moved in more directly into the think tank, but prior to that, when you're doing administrative work and doing electoral related work, was there a campaign or something that excited you, that kind of drove you further into this field?
Well, actually, together with a group of young let's say enthusiasts, or let's say people who were at the starting point of their expert career in different fields also. We tried to do something similar as a part-time in 2011, back in 2011, but what I acknowledged then is that you cannot do that just a part-time. You need to give more resources, more time, and the involvement should be, let's say, deeper from a group of people if you want to succeed in this direction.
And what was that in 2011? Was it a campaign?
Well, no, not actually. It was more about the general state of information of media, and my understanding that people simply do not understand a lot of things. Because nobody explains them complicated things in an appropriate way with the simple words, as explicit as that could be for simple people.
Right.
And we didn't see that content in the media. A lot of opinions, bloggers, whatever, who wanted, commented. Some efforts to communicate from the side of government on those time, but well, government is also always biased by their political interest, and even they didn't have a lot of experience and knowledge how to explain complicated things. So that was the beginning of era of mass manipulation.
Okay.
especially for Moldova. If we are speaking about 2010, 11, it was it was the rise of the era of post-truth. Yeah, when truth is what is more said and received than what is really true. Well, we didn't understood so well all these processes those time, but after that, well, being connected to all these political issues, policy issues, of course, I was following the activities of different think tanks. I even worked as a consultant for 1 year in, well, I had a contract for the public relations consulting for an important think tank here in Chisinau, and I've seen how that works from inside, which are the good parts, what could be done better. But my general understanding was that there is a big lack of involvement, because think tanks, other NGOs are producing a lot of expertise, a lot of good products, recommendations, say arguments and so on, but they didn't manage every time to receive public support, to create public awareness, to communicate efficiently with the media, to put pressure on politicians, to put pressure on government, and to make the ideas being implemented. And in absolutely majority of cases, it finished just with a policy paper, posted on the website, or produced as a printed version, and that's all.
Right.
Also, other specific problem for those time was this enormous flood of disinformation and manipulation that were provided abroad in European Union, in United States, by the acting government at those time. I mean, Plahotniuk's government. They were simply paying a lot of lobby companies. They were transforming our diplomatic representation, like embassies in US, in Brussels, in other parts, in their lobby branches of their political party, and flooding with disinformation and manipulation. And we acknowledge that somebody needs to check all this information, to produce alternative reports, to bring real expertise, to put pressure on them, but also to deliver this qualitative information to our foreign partners.
Okay.
So that was our priority, also one of our priorities of those time, and we just started to work right in those directions.
Okay, so yesterday when we were talking, or the other day when we were talking, you mentioned that you spent time in the States. Did you?
More or less.
Was it during this time?
I visited the U.S. beginning. The first time we landed in Washington in the autumn of 2017, and we had no idea. It was I and one of my colleagues and one of our partners, organization representatives from Romania. We know nothing about Washington, about United States, but we were totally aware that we need to raise Moldova in the agenda of DC stakeholders, also with civil society. I mean, think tanks in DC. That was one of our, let's say, main goals, and I think we succeed in some manner, well, as much as a simple young think tank could do.
Okay, so that was in 2017. So let's come back to that in just one moment. So it looks like 2011, 2012, you kind of started moving more narrowly into the think tank atmosphere. So you think tanks in Moldova function as watchdogs, like civil society organizations? They publish reports on political activity and on information to try to get the record straight. Is this kind of their general rule, application of their practices within Moldova?
Well, mainly yes. We, as an organization and with a network of our traditional partners, try to, especially in, let's say, in an unusual circumstances, we decided to act differently. Many civil society leaders, think tanks, continued their practice to produce, just like to produce reports, to deliver recommendations to foreign partners, to national actors, and to express somehow very softly, publicly their opinion. We decided that that's not enough.
Okay.
Taking into account because the situation in the country was transforming very fast in practically a dictatorship, and we need to act more actively with non-traditional methods. That's why we initiated different activities like more specific for a do tank and not for a think tank.
A do tank?
Yeah, which is not like to produce actions, to produce changes, not just to deliver recommendation and stop on that.
So you see Watchdog as being a little bit more activist, proactive.
Yeah, we initiated different public protests. We initiated different, let's say, collective petitions. We tried to be as active as possible in media. We acted also for support media in receiving donations and sponsorship from international partners. We were very active in communication with different political parties and trying to understand and to reformat the political agenda as much as possible. We initiated a national referenda. So actually we tried to do that, but we were suppressed by the Central Electoral Commission illegally, actually.
What was that
referendum?
Also showed?
That was the referendum to, well, that should be actually the first national legislative referendum where the people should decide for one single law, which couldn't be changed by the parliament.
Okay.
The law was, well, the general idea was to establish to re-establish the proportional system of the elections for the parliament. So we initiated that as a group of people from civil society, from Watchdog, but not only. And we managed to put together in this initiative absolutely different political parties. From left to right, from pro-Russians to pro-Unionists, pro-Romanians, pro-NATO. Yeah, they stayed together in the same
coalition type?
Well, actually in the same activity, I'd say not in a coalition. It was a big place where they all stayed together. And that was one of our efforts, at least to look at. You could be different. You have the right for different opinions. You shouldn't agree with everything, but there are some issues that should be somehow untouchable and should be agreed by all the people. And first of all, it's about democracy. It's about the rules, how we elect our representatives, and the fairness of our elections. So that was like from time to time. Also, we initiated different disruptive actions, like some of our colleagues also. I was the beginning of a social movement that has been known now as Occupy Gugutsa. That was a part, let's say, the most active part of opposition protests in 2018 after the local elections. We involved very much in the exposing manipulation in the electoral campaigns, especially if we're talking about local elections in Chisinau in 2018, and at the very end that changed the results. Well, we didn't play for a specific candidate or against a specific candidate. We were just exposing manipulation and bias. And that's not our, let's say, problem, that this manipulation and illegalities come from the one single candidate. It's his problem or her problem, actually.
The whole process.
Yeah, so in this situation, when we seen that the country is going in a very wrong direction, we switched a little bit more to these actions. And let's say proactive actions.
Okay, so you did mention a couple things I want to go back to a little bit. First, I want to ask you, you mentioned you've been looking for international funding opportunities. I do have an interest in the recently proposed legislation to limit international funding for civil society organizations. Are you concerned at all about that? Do you receive international funding? Would you
Yeah,
be
of course. Without international funding, we have no chances.
okay, so you guys would be...
And it's the case of every NGO in this country and every think tank especially.
So do you think, what percentage, if you had to guess, what percentage of the CEOs, civil society organizations in Moldova receive international funding? Is it like 90? 99%?
And 9.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah, this is actually, we do not have still. There are some mechanisms of redirecting some money and so on, but it's small. We do not have this. First of all, we do not have experience of businesses who are investing in NGOs, like without being totally involved in controlling them. Yeah, we received this practice of gongos in the last 2 years, especially. The ex-government of Democrats of Pavel Filip just taking some money from the state budget and distributed that to some think tanks, actually, to some gongos. Who were, let's say, supposed to make the monitoring of government policies. But actually that was the guys who were present in all their TV stations and supporting government in any idiotic policy or decision this government was doing. So it's like, you know, this is typical Gongo situation.
Like, so they did provide some funding to
yeah.
NGOs, but it was
so
controlled.
they were paying to their NGOs, actually. They were paying to those NGOs and to make them be kind.
Did you receive any funding for that?
No, of course not. Practically, if we are talking about public money, it's the only case we won an open contest for providing services to the parliament this summer, to the Special Commission for the Investigations of Big Frauds that was 1 year ago and 1.5 years ago. The government make the privatization of 2 state companies. It's the bus stations, all the bus stations in the country, one company, and other was the only state-owned air company, Air Moldova. So we participated in this it's tender and won the tender and received $6,000 for that. Of course, it even didn't cover our work, but we were able to do it in any case. We used also several money from the projects we have. Because it's extremely important. We actually, like up to 90%, our experts produced these reports, and after that the reports were approved by the parliament, and now we have this process of regaining state control for these companies, which were actually stolen from the public. They're not privatized.
I do have one question. I was talking with somebody the other day from the European Development Bank. Did they invest in that bus project? Because one of the big projects he was talking about was that they had invested in the bus system or the transit system. Are you familiar at all with that?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Well, I heard something. Well, I'm not a fan of EBRD projects in Moldova.
No?
I don't see them as very efficient, frankly. It's like
okay. So the other topic I wanted to go back to was protests. This is something that I've heard a little bit about, but I don't know much about. What's the process of going about? When you hold a protest here in Moldova, do you have to file like a notice with the government, or?
Yeah, actually, you need to. Well, every protest we have a good law. I believe it's a good law. In case it is being applied with a goodwill. Somebody need to be an organizer for protest, so you need to submit an information to the local administration, like to the mayor office, that looks, we are going to make a meeting in those places at those dates from, I know, 10 o'clock till 3 o'clock. and we need you to organize let's say, the security of the area, and to take in account that the transport need to be redirected, maybe, and you just need to tell we think will be like 10,000 or 1,000 or 500 people. So every protest need to have an organizer,
And you as project manager have taken on that role?
Well, no.
This is
it's not a part of our projects, like say, funded from abroad or something. That not. It's a part of our civic activity, and we are doing that. Citizens, anybody can.
So this
do
is more
that.
the social citizen level, not necessarily.
Yeah, more than it. It's always with a big. Well, it's not something pre-established. You make the appeal. You see people who are. Somehow you connect or have the same ideas, who support the same ideas,
Right.
and after that you stay together, plan, and there could be people from civil society, from political parties, from different political parties. There should be simple citizens who are not connected in anyhow to CSOs or parties, or I don't know. Anybody can connect in case he is or she is active.
Because like a year and a half ago, there was that huge protest down at the center, right? Or was it?
Well,
There's
maybe
been a couple.
the biggest protest was 2016.
Yeah, there's an enormous protest. But for the most part, protests don't receive much resistance. You know, they don't from authorities. Or
Well, I think it's a separate issue. We received a lot of experiences, mostly negative, about protests. We had very tough debates with politicians on how to organize that, which are the goals. But, well, you need to understand, we were involved somehow as participants, contributed somehow to organization. But the main role always were of the politicians. So we couldn't have that leverage that, like, guys, it's stupid to do protests in a Sunday, you know. And we protest in front of empty governmental buildings, which is stupid. It's beginning from these basic issues and finishing with the issues like which are the goals. Guys, you are declaring just messages and slogans, and you do not have a plan. Let's see what to do.
Right.
Well, it's been a lot of. I would prefer to stop here, because we have a very, let's say, specific relationship with a lot of politicians, mostly because of these common experiences. But that was well. I think we need to do that at those times. We were in need to do that at those times, and we done that. And in case there will be a need to repeat that, we will repeat that. I hope we and also politicians will, let's say, learn the lessons from those past experiences.
One last small question related to protests. So here it's not so much, like in the States we'll have like, have you heard of like the Antifa and the right, to like almost citizen groups coming at each other. Here you don't really have that so much as just kind of the citizenry against authority. You don't really have riots between different political citizen groups.
If we are talking about street and let's say real clashes, we do not have. We have a lot of clashes between what we call left and right. It's more about being pro-Russian or anti-Russian, and mainly it's like the most aggressive Ruski Mir oriented people, and another part the most let's say
Romanian,
soft pro-unionists. But there are also different people. There are people who are unionists but with very liberal visions, very progressive if you want, and very European, but we need to recognize there are some tough nationalists, like very conservatives. Well,
so there's a wide spectrum.
Yeah, but these clashes are mainly in media, in the internet, obviously, and being very efficiently fueled from abroad, explored by different internal groups. For example, for President Dodon is crucial to have some very aggressive opponents on the pro-Romania or pro-unionist side. For him, it's not okay to have somebody who is really, say, equilibrated there. Why? Because in this way he is waving this invented danger of I don't know, Nazi politicians, and he poses as a defender of, let's say, Russian-speaking people, old people, Soviet nostalgic people, you know. So this is how that works in Moldova. But it's mainly on the TV and in the internet, but not in real life.
Okay. All right, so moving on from protests, it was kind of an interesting discussion. I haven't really talked to somebody about the local protests here. But on to Watchdog and a couple of specific projects they have. What would you say are like the 2 or 3 biggest democratic development programs that Watchdog has right now that are most important in your view?
Well, for us, well, the general idea of making public authorities accountable and let people know that by staying together, by being informed, by taking attitude, I don't know, by signing a petition, by a share on Facebook, by I don't know, participation in the protest or involvement in political party or whatever, you know, in a civic group, you can change something. So this is ongoing idea, yeah, you know, and as many people we convince to do that, that's better for us. It's like an indicator for our success. If we are talking about specific projects, we normally do not have projects very, let's say, on a very specific areas. It's always about making analysis on different topics, mainly energetics and politics at it all, which involves propaganda, foreign interference, analysis of how that work, and to try and actions to counter it. This is like.
All right, so foreign interference. Do you have a specific program that focuses on foreign interference?
No, unfortunately not. We are looking on that. We think we are prepared to manage a big project on this issue, or at least to be involved in that. But that need to be systemic and to include deep research, ongoing research, monitoring, producing the clever, or say smart counteractions, test the counteractions, especially I talk about information and all related.
Right.
I mean media, because it's the main channel of spreading. And to see how that works, to see how we can change people's minds, how we can counter this brainwashing propaganda that comes from outside, but also being generated or rebroadcasted inside Moldova.
Okay, so back to specific programs that you guys are working on right now within Watchdog. Is propaganda or banking, or is there a current project within Watchdog right now that you think is the most important one?
Well, we have one most important project is being supported by National Endowment for Democracy. It includes several subjects of monitoring. It's internal political life and all related to democracy. We are preparing to see how the general framework of competition is being changed before the next year presidential elections. And other direction is, of course, economy. We will look very deep on what the new government is doing on energy sector.
Right, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of economic talk right now. I believe the new prime minister's meeting. He might be going to Moscow this week.
He was already.
He's already back.
Yeah.
Was that like yesterday or something? It must have happened. But it also, I just read that China is investing in
No, it's
some
not investing.
infrastructure.
No,
And
you know, well, this is more. It's not just economical issues. It's more political issues about taking money from Russia and from China, because Russia and China is not investing in development of our institutions, rule of law, and so on. Vice versa, it's not interesting for them. So if you,
so it's more trade.
it's not trade. It's if you are talking about Russia, they give money to corrupt the country, to corrupt the system, and to take control in this way.
Right.
This is what they actually want, and that what will mean in case they will invest. In case of China, it's even simpler. They have so much money that they can simply buy. Yeah, and they impose a very tough condition. I don't know, well, there are rumors that in some cases direct corruption of some politicians and decision makers are also part of this strategy. And after that, they just take control of the strategic infrastructure. In case of Russia, it's also, of course, present. They even openly talking about they are interested to take control of the only airport of the country, of the only seaport of the country, of course, and the railroad maybe, but obviously the energy sector. They already have a big share, and they practically control our energy sector. And now they could be interested to take control also on the energy, also electricity distribution system and generation and distribution system.
They're interested in energy.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I've been watching the news, and since the new prime minister's come in, some of the economic developments, it does look like there's an interest in developing trade with like Belarus. There is a shift.
No, this is, I can say bullshit, yeah? Okay.
You're welcome to say whatever you like.
Good. This is nothing. He come back from Russia with a lot of declaration. He gone there and he didn't sign any agreement.
Yeah.
We didn't have any real changes in the trade with Russia or Belarus. Well, trade with Belarus, it's like just to tackle the Russian system of embargoes against Moldova, and we understand. Well, of course, we have some direct trade. We are buying some issues from Belarus. But we have 60% of our exports to European Union.
Right.
This is what matters.
There's been this big shift to the wine industry, even to the West, I've heard.
Yeah.
But I've
not
heard
just to the West, actually, they diversified all around the world. We are trading wines in Africa, in China. We are trading wines in the United States. Obviously, Romania become one of the biggest market for us. And that's logical because it's nearby. And they have this cultural preference to buy wines from Moldova, but not just wines. The only issue is that if we want to trade, especially our agricultural products there, we need to respect European standards. If we will receive these highest European standards, we can trade all around the world, even in Russia. And that is the interest of Russia, to disrupt this process of adaptation of our economy to the trade with the European Union. Because they are trading in their main product in Moldova that is being, let's say, that increase is the sale of propaganda. It's like, oh, look, the exports to Russia increased with 15%. Yeah, okay, we have 11%, now we have 12%. You know, and they trade that, and even with fake figures. The President Dodon made an enormous campaign in 2018 about the increases of exports and trade with Russia, mainly based on fake figures.
Well, I mean, this is one thing I also noticed was they were going to I read in the news, and yes, you have to take everything you read in the news with a grain of salt, but they're going to decrease the trade barriers with Russia. So there is with this new government, there is this opportunity to watch this economic shift.
Even the issue we are discussing about reviewing, these embargoes are illegal. Moldova and Russia are part of free trade zone of CIS.
Yeah,
you know. So any embargo about a member of CIS by a member of this free trade zone is illegal.
There's the CIS, but there's also the EE. What's the Eastern?
No, we are not part of that. No.
I thought you were like kind of had one foot in the door.
Well, actually, President personally decided to be part. Okay, he is a part. It's not. It's his problem. But the general issue is, well, you have no what to talk about. So the only discussion could be why you still impose us these illegal embargoes.
Mm-hmm.
This is it.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time left here, so I wanted to kind of just briefly touch on Transnistria and Gagauzia. I know this might not be a specific area of focus of Watchdog, but it is part of my research that I'm kind of looking at. How do you see these autonomous regions coming into effect or coming into play with geopolitics in Moldova?
Well, Gagauzia is perfectly integrated in Moldova if we're talking about economy, administration, businesses, and so on. You can go in the big markets in Chisinau and see a lot of wonderful products from Gagauzia. It's exchanges. There are no any barriers. It's just a part of Moldova.
Okay.
They have their legal and constitutional autonomous issues, cultural, administrative, political, which is good. But the only issue is this geopolitical orientation, and it's all about propaganda, not anything else. And the total stupidity of all rulers of Moldova, beginning from independence till now, because during the late Soviet time, there were more people who were speaking Gagauz language in Gagauzia than now. So it's an ongoing lose of cultural identity and ethnic identity of these people. There are more and more young people who even do not speak the language. And of course the total domination of Russian media. Because, well, in 30 years nobody organized for them national schools where they can really learn and being taught in their native language.
To preserve them.
Always in Russian. And that exposed them. It's okay to know Russian, but we need to do something about preserving the cultural identity of these people.
And how do you think Turkey comes into play? I just saw that Turkey's building a consulate there.
Well, there are a lot of people from Gagauzia. Well, in 90s there were very deep contacts between Turkey and people in Gagauzia, which is normally they are speaking the same language, they are appropriate culturally, ethnically, but in 2000s it somehow disappeared. Now it appears again. Generally it's good because Turkey could be those partners in case we will have clever policies in Chisinau who can help us with this rethinking of how we integrate them in Moldova and how we preserve the cultural identity of those people. Because Moscow do not have any interest to preserve the identity. They just want to erase anything and to transform these people in Russian-speaking supporters of Ruski Mir who are living in corruption and poverty. It doesn't matter. It's important for them to be this factor of disruption, and of course we need to do something about media. But it's not just about Gagauzia; it's all around Moldova.
Okay, and what in your view? You've mentioned propaganda. It's all about propaganda. What is the single message that this propaganda is, the effect that it's trying to create?
Well, it is the same as in the region. The effect is to create disloyal citizens.
So it's aimed at creating alliances, trying to encourage them to...
I will explain simply. People who live in this case in Moldova, but are more loyal to Putin's regime than to their own country. People who have this, in this way they do not participate in building up their country and in this general effort of the society. And of course with all related narratives of bad Europe, perfect Russia, great Putin, and so on. It's all more or less explained. It's nothing new. But the general effect is this one, and that's why it's more dangerous even than energy issues and other, because it's a way to direct influence the outcomes of elections.
Right. Okay. So I mean, I'm American, right? So I'm from the U.S. So I'm still learning kind of the general geopolitics in this part of this eastern part of Europe. So you're saying the propaganda kind of, Putin has a huge political effect in this region, is
Yeah.
what you're saying. So people, and there's a large part of the population here that through this propaganda may feel more connected to Putin and Russia than them having a nationalistic Moldovan identity.
Well, not national identity, maybe. Yeah, generally, yeah.
All right, no, I'm just trying. Yeah, I'm just.
Well, more than need, this contributes directly to a distortion of the general idea of what is to be a Moldovan and how we see our identity of the country, of the people of this country. It's like this is actually a continuation of the Soviet time narrative that being Moldovan is being friendly to Russia and being against Romania and being against Europe, against the West, you know. So they somehow connect all these issues. And that creates actually a disruption in the minds of people in the very end, and didn't let us to have this cohesion, to build up a country, to generate something like a national idea which we can go on and that can unite the society.
Right, and this is, we'll finish up out here on this. But I did see, like, I think it was in 2017, Platonuk, and I know he's not the most popular figure right now in Moldova, but he kind of made a statement, I believe, that was like, now we want to move towards an agenda that's neither West nor, neither pro-West or pro-East. Yeah. We want one that's pro-Moldovan. So does that message still ring true, or do you think?
No, that was a fake.
That was a fake.
Okay. They don't care. Platonuk never was pro-West and pro-East. He was steal as much money as possible and after that leave the country. But we still have, it's an always a new old story, coming from independence time, when people, we need to be with the West and with the East, but actually people were not with one, not with the other, but with their own interests.
Right.
What is the saddest issue in this story is that Moscow understands who these people are and what they have in their mind, and Russians were exploring all this in their own interest, of course. And what we cannot say about the West generally, because it's easy. Russia never stopped to interfere in internal affairs. They even do not.
Right.
Yeah. They have proxy political parties here, and they operate directly.
Well, Transnistria.
They are giving. Well, Transnistria is another important agent of influence on Moldova's internal agenda, but it's like more on long-term issues. But internally, they creating parties. They are dissenting here. Hundreds of political experts who are working on elections, working on party building. They are giving them money. They are financing here mass media, which is promoting them. They are giving business opportunities to connect them deeply to Russia, to political leaders from Moldova. So they are openly interfering. And on the other part, there are Western partners who are working through assistance programs with the governments, with officials, and at the end of the day, we have Russia being spent like, $10 million in a year, but not more, and US together with the EU spending hundreds of millions every year in Moldova, and Russia is still in control,
Okay, so one more question here. So you said when you visited the U.S., Washington was kind of new to you, and you were there and you wanted to present Moldova as, you wanted to insert kind of Moldovan interests into the agenda, I think, a little bit. You wanted to promote Moldova. So how, what is the strategic importance of Moldova? I mean, what if you like were telling, if you had to explain to investors why they should invest in your organization?
Well, I'm sorry, just a second. Actually, our general idea, well, we do not try to pose Moldova as extremely strategically important. There is some strategic importance of any country on this globe, but Moldova is definitely not in those top of strategically important in, I don't know, military, geopolitically,
Right.
economically, and so on. It's mainly about contribution not to the stability, but potential contribution to instability. Moldova, as a tiny and totally unimportant country, was the place which made possible laundering of more than $50 billion in like 5 years.
Right.
Money who were after that spread all around the Western countries, and after that used in anything like special operations, interference in elections, political influence, propaganda, and so on. So even being very small, but still has a very corrupt and practically mafia type government, and the right to put the stamp of the country, it could affect a lot the regional stability and regional security. And I don't mention here the smuggling schemes and whatever you want. So that was our general approach. Like, we have our problems. It's bad to live in Moldova, with this kind of government, with a high level of poverty, with total lack of human rights, respect, and so on. But that doesn't affect directly United States. While there are some people who are defendant of democracy, of human rights, and this is their job, but the most of decision makers are still like very, well, you know better than me.
Well, Moldova would be like a natural step with NATO. NATO would have an interest here because it would be a step closer to Russia.
No.
No?
No.
I mean, there is a civilian outpost, I believe, in Moldova.
Okay, that's like
No.
all around. What is important for NATO is Ukraine.
Okay.
In case you can lose Ukraine, Moldova will not help you a lot.
Okay. Valeriu, thank you very much for speaking with me today.
Thank you for this interview.
Yes. Have a good day.
Thank you.